In an interview you did with Keith Seward, you say the subject of painting is always the author, the artist. And since you were the author of your paintings, and the subjects are mainly women, or up until now they've been mainly women, are these fictional or autobiographical characters? Where are they coming from?
That's something that changes, that aspect changes a lot from body work to body work. So sometimes they were just like basically self-portraits disguised. When I used to do high school girls, that was pretty much what they were, was like me as a girl in high school or something. And that statement, I mean it more, it's more of a pretty obvious kind of thought, that you don't paint about anything else than yourself. I don't think you ever could actually criticize. I was meaning that more of in response to political art that's about ethics or politics or something like that. That it's never about that. That it's always just affirming something and usually about yourself. And to the extent that it's about anything in a one-to-one correspondence, whatever. So. No, I just always found it so distasteful to paint men, and it never occurred to me to paint men. I did in my last show, but that was as monsters. Yeah, I'm also at a point right now where it's like my work is a little bit in I'm having difficulty, mainly because I don't know what kind of woman I'm want to do, I don't know what to, there's no hook. I don't have a particular hook these days.
Is it from your imagination? Is this a fancy projection?
It's always from my imagination, but it's I mean, occasionally I've done specific women, but only one, and every once in a while I'll get. And I had an idea a long time ago about doing B. Arthur, but that was when I was making really bad abstract paintings, and I'd had this idea about B. Arthur just kind of as a joke, but it persisted, beyond being a joke with myself. And then when it came around to me actually being a painter that paints pictures, it occurred to me to do that. And so I painted a picture of B. Arthur. I painted some other specific people, but it's usually, and more it's from my imagination.
Right. You painted B. Arthur in the nude, correct?
Yeah.
Isn't that she was nude?
The idea wasn't to paint her nude, but the idea was to paint B. Arthur. But as I was painting it, it kind of came out that way.
Is this the genre of males painting women? The history of, or the idea of males painting women? And why would you continue this? The men have always painted women.
Right.
And are you stepping in and taking over from the past, or?
It's not as intentional as that. I mean, it happens so naturally to paint a girl, paint a picture. It's like when I was in high school, I drew girls, and when I was besides. I mean, maybe before that I drew drag racers or something, but other than that, it's girls, and it's just comes, at least for me, comes very naturally. And actually, for a lot of women artists, it comes naturally too. I identify with women more than men. Yeah.
What about you spoke in one of your interviews about the objectification of women, and that women have been objectified in paintings for a long time. Yeah. Where does your work fit into that? Are you objectifying women? Is it a critique on that?
No, it's not a critique on it.
It's not.
It's just objectifying women. It's not, I mean, actually it's definitely not a critique. I mean, I don't think anybody makes a critique of anything in art. I don't think art's about critiquing anything.
Is it didactic? I mean, are you making a case against it, or?
No, I'm not making a case. I mean, this sounds, I guess, intentionally naive, but I really just want to make something moving and beautiful. I may use cliches sometimes, or use things that may be somewhat ironic, but I'm not using irony, using irony to say that this is a social construction. Say femininity, for instance, or masculinity is a purely social construction, and therefore parody it by using an ironic cliche. It's more like I can't help but use an ironic cliche sometimes. And so I just do, I take the easiest route, to get to where I want to
So are these ironic paintings? Are you using irony here?
Not intentionally, or not, not, you know, it's not, I'm not referencing things that would then, you know, have a predictable outcome in your mind. Like I would refer to such and such, which would link it up with this and that. That I don't do. I think it's almost impossible not to be somewhat ironic in making art in this culture. And I don't think that art is ironic for like the first time anyway. So, you know, art's been ironic since 1945, really, and it was ironic before. It was ironic in when Manet painted. It was ironic in the 18th century. So, but this is not a new thing. It's a genre of art, actually. You know.
Mm-hmm. But there's also sincere art. I mean,
I just don't see that as a true like duality. It's like sincerity versus irony. That's like saying abstraction versus figuration. It's a.
Well, they exist on totally different.
They exist on a continuum and also at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. It's not either or, and it's. You know, you look at Goya and you find ironic elements. You look at Koons and you find, you know, a lot of sincerity and a lot of like moral and gravity. You know, so I don't think you can. You know, isolate. You know, art's expressive. Art, if it's not expressive, it's bad art. So it's, you know, however it's being expressive, whether it's partly ironic or horrifying or happy or sad or political or non-political. I think it's. I mean, I'm not ironic in my studio, like smirking and chuckling.
So
and
it's
laughing
not a strategy. You're not using irony as a strategy, or it's not premeditated.
No, not like the you know Metro Pictures people from the 80s or something like that, like who appropriated images and it was a there was like a hard structure of irony that you would have to know about in order to interpret the piece or something like that. You know, and they're not on that kind of political level. You know.
You had mentioned beauty. Do you think beauty exists in your paintings?
Sure, I hope so.
Beauty in the sense that it's painted, or beauty in the characters that you use? I mean, you've made a series of work. I think you started off with Adolescent, yearbook pictures, and then you did the Arthur series, and you've done a lot. And the last thing I saw in New York was the series of the professor-like gentleman, middle-aged gentleman with the younger woman, and you picked a certain type of women that maybe, well, you've also done, of course, the pin-up women, which are perhaps the American idealized, you know, sexy symbol, whether that's beauty or not.
I'm not critiquing that. I mean, if you're looking for a critique of like sexism or something, or like,
no,
that's not what I'm doing. I'm aware that there's like cliche aspects to it, but and that was more by default. I used to do paintings of like older women, which were I was really trying to make them extremely condensed in every possible way, like really be in the center and really be against the kind of art that is about like combining languages and layering languages. It would be about this very almost victimized subject condensed in the center by like this authoritative force. I mean, that's already saying too much, but I mean, that was my own thinking, and the kind of there'd be a male presence in the sort of way it was painted, but there wouldn't be an overt male presence except in the sort of subjugation of the subject. But and the draining of femininity from this, or at least a mockery of femininity in the woman. But when I started doing couples, like men and women, it seemed natural for them to like retreat back into their like cliches. Like the women would be like Faxon Blancs, and the men would be like bitter, alcoholic, I don't know, Michael Caine kind of guys. But it wasn't like a strategy. It didn't like occur to me to do that. It was just like they started happening kind of that way. I started looking, I was like, at first I was making drawings, copying those old, engravings of like the unequal couple where the old man would be like squeezing the breast of the woman and she'd be stealing his money at the same time. And, or Death and the Maiden and those kind of things. But that kind of guy just kind of came out. Also, it was also because I didn't know how to paint men, so I started painting women and putting beards on them to just make a man, you know? Make it a man at sort of the last minute, you know, like procrastinate about it, turning into a man and then making a man. And so the look of the guy came about from that. And also, and then I wanted to make the woman like really different from the man, so like, you know, make her a, you know, sort of Anna Nicole Smith or something. And, you know,
yeah, I mean, that's a...
For the purposes of my painting, that is more of a woman. I'm not saying that she's more of a woman than Mary Tyler Moore or something.
No, no, but you do have a stereotypic, consistent figure that you use throughout, and it seems to coincide a lot with when you look at 1960s Playboy's magazines, you know, the kind of the American, you know...
Yeah. Well, that was the... I mean, I started actually looking at those you know, I got a lot of scenarios from those, from like Camel cigarette ads or something, or liquor ads from those magazines from that time, because at that time was also when it was almost this obsessive use of couples in advertising. There always be a guy with his girlfriend, and the guy was like the subject of the ad. The ads get super macho and super aggressive at the same time that I don't know, presumably the sexual revolution is like making men all insecure about themselves and about whether women are going to run off and whether they're going to think on their own or whatever. But that's not what I'm not critiquing that, I'm just saying it was an interesting, weird mood to it that it really appealed to me, so.
There's another quote in Parquet interview of yours, that when you say, with American painting there's always an ultimate sexual impotence which manifests itself in violence. It's been my observation that negative images of women in painting suggest submerged impotency of the artist, or a gender...
Is this still me talking?
No, this is
talking
me. No, I'm just saying throughout time, when there's been a negative image of women in painting, it suggested a submerged impotency, or ambiguity of the gender of the painter.
Well, there's also a debate about what constitutes a negative image of a woman. I mean, a lot of people say that I'm painting like a terrifically negative image of women.
I've heard that. Actually, I think you've received a lot of press about that.
But those are but see, that's also the kind of look, that's the way of looking at paintings, the same way that people look at movies and like don't like the movie because there was like a mean person within, a mean character in the movie, and they judge, you know, they judge the form by the content, and that's, you know, the basic sort of Philistine stupidity.
Well, as author, though, you are claiming, I mean, whether you're a writer, whether you're a painter, that is authorship, and that is the creation of the person. So when you're being criticized, I guess they think that it's coming directly from you.
They think that I want them to be that way, and it's unfair for me to demand that women be that way, right? I mean, it's sort of simple, but I mean, I keep hearing this, and so I think like, well, what am I actually doing wrong? You know what I mean? Like, it's wrong to like represent this, I guess, because it pressures people into thinking they have to be different than what they are.
It's advertising. I mean, you know, to talk about advertising, when women are bombarded, or men, whatever.
Those ads are made to make men feel insecure, not women.
Oh, do you think so?
Yeah, if you want to make women feel insecure, just look at a fashion magazine. That's the best thing for it, not these ads in Playboy.
Sometimes the argument has been that these men come home and they want their wives to look like this, or their girlfriends to look like this, or
well, I'd still put it to you that
Vogue
magazine makes women feel a lot more insecure than naked ladies in Playboy. But that's a separate issue.
Right.
But I mean, if we're talking about what actually like damages already insecure people, I mean, it's not my paintings, certainly.
Well, it's the first thing. I mean, if you talk about layers, that image is the first thing the viewer is going to see.
Yeah.
And then if they can get beyond that, they'll go into the psychology of who are you thinking about or whatever. But it's hard to get away from the image.
But I think about women all the time, like more than any other thing besides actual painting, you know.
What do you think about women?
All kinds of things. I mean, you know, what anybody would think about what they think about all the time, which is a range. I mean, I hope a sort of broad range of emotions. You know, and it's not just, when I think about women, I don't only think about what's like supposedly best for them. I think about what's worse for them too.
Are you speaking for them, or you're still speaking from a male perspective?
It's my fantasy. I mean, I'm not speaking for anybody but myself, and maybe I may have a gripe, or I may have a favorite thing, you know, all kinds of. See, I think this gets back to what you first asked me, which is like, you paint, if you're not painting or making art about something very basic and personal and about pleasure and about affirmation, you're probably a pretty bad artist, and a boring one at that. And so, if I paint women, it's half the time it's just out of lust, you know, or it's out of the fact, if I thought about like covered bridges as much as I think about women, I would paint covered bridges like in all their many, you know, but the point is, and you say like, well, you're talking about women like they're covered bridges, but that's the point, is it involves objectification. That's not necessary. So it's a tendency I have. You think of women as objects. You think of them as people. You think of them as objects. You think of them as a nemesis. You think of them as a god. You know, you think of, at least I think of them in a lot of different ways. Like sometimes in a very sexist way, and sometimes in a completely, you know, wonderful, benevolent way. You know, and an intelligent way and a stupid way. You know.
So if we were to take different parts of, different paintings of yours and put them along the wall, could we say we're looking at John Currin's desires? You have stereotyped women, so I'm not really sure if that's the projection.
My men are pretty stereotyped as well.
Yeah.
And I have stereotyped clouds too.
Yeah.
And I mean,
so
maybe this means I'm a bad artist, but I really only paint with stereotypes. Because I mean mainly because I don't go out and do it from life, you know, so I don't get any particularity, and I'm interested in things not being really particular. I like their like stereotype, you know, state.
You stated that people seem to be losing the ability to deal with passion in their work, and I would like to know, what is passion to you?
I think the confidence to like paint or make what your fantasy is, regardless of its moral overtones or whatever, or undertones or whatever. Like, just do it because you want to do it. Doing things because you want to do them, not doing things because you think it'll make good art or because you think it'll be good for the world or something, but just making them, like, you know, being expressionistic in the simplest sense of like, that's what I think of my work as expressionistic. You know, and which brings up back irony, is like you could look at Kirchner or Emil Nold or Max Beckmann and say it's like heavily ironic work. The picture of Max Beckmann in his like suit is an ironic painting, but it's also it's a fairly emotionally shattering painting. But it's just because the emotions are complex, you may feel some irony. But then again, irony is an emotion, is another emotion. The feeling, it's like nostalgia or ennui or sadness or joy. It's along with them, I think. It's not like sincerity versus irony. It's sincerity versus being a bad artist and being mute and boring.
Oh, are you saying sincerity equals being a bad artist and being
No, I'm saying that's, if you want a real duality, you can say boring, mute, predictable, blah, 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 versus sincerity, which is like exciting and entertaining and moving and you know, erotic and all these things.
When I think of sincerity, I think more of a positive kind of romantic vision, and I don't think romance and irony really. Well, that's like sincerity-ism. You know, that would be like sincerism, you know, which there's a lot of artists that do that, or political, and then there's like a whole range of genres of sincerism, like political sincerism, or like, you know, art sincerism, painterly sincerism, you know, like something like that. But that's not what I'm talking about with sincerity. I mean, either you're talking about like the old version of the word, or you're not talking about anything but a kind of, I don't know, something that came out of college somewhere that is like the new definition of the word. Right. No, I mean,
I know what you mean by people always say sincerity in painting, and it kind of means this awful, twizzled kind of kind of preciousness, and then the person always pours forth like what, like you're supposed to like them before you like their art, or you're supposed to pity them before you like their art because they're like a victim. Either they're really nice, or they're a really sincere victim, or they're like, you know, it's always trying to find authenticity from experience rather than the force of somebody's like fantasy or imagination. Like authenticity in art doesn't come from like the artist's experience, I don't think at all.
It doesn't come from the artist's experience?
Yeah, it doesn't come from like who you are, like what kind of life you've led. It's or even like whether you're a good or bad person, you know, morally or something. It's how forceful and intoxicating and exciting is the vision. You know what I mean? Like that's, you could say Fassbinder was an awful person in so many different ways, but he's a magnificent artist, a great artist.
Why should these negative images of women be out there? Because it just perpetrates, it just comes back. It's like a cyclical thing. It comes back. And it's, you know.
That's like saying, that's idiotic. I mean, that's just an idiotic attitude, I think. It's saying that people shouldn't think about things, and the idea that you could be, in my case, be like, with respect to women, like to be attracted to women, first of all, immediately makes my relationship not neutral. You know what I mean? It colors everything. I'm attracted to women, so I'm going to objectify them to some extent. It's impossible not to. And I would think the same holds true for women, about men. Like, how could you not have like love, hate, contempt, worship, all those things involved in an object of desire, which is really an object of desire, because you're the only subject you can ever know.
There are artists, I think, who would exploit this issue. An artist, you know, would exploit the issue of sincerity and irony and stuff and it's just a strategy as opposed to being authentic and sincere. And that's why I asked you, you know, is this more of a strategy, or is this actually, you know?
If it's a strategy to like accept it and not and try to break myself of the habit, break the habit in myself of like avoiding things for reasons that are not artistic. I
guess the problem that female critics have is that they feel women have been the brunt of all of this.
They're going to continue to be the brunt. I mean, as long as men make art.
As long as men are in the art world and they're
as long as men make any kind of art, not just
yeah.
painting, but actually especially painting. It's like to paint and not. It takes a tremendous artificial act of will to not paint women. To paint, for instance, abstract paintings at this point. And my point in that that quote about like art being a kind of form of impotence which shades into violence, I was really speaking of abstract expressionism.
Right.
As like, how could it have come about? How could these painters have painted? I've always found those very perverse paintings, and I think you know, and it occurred to me. I think I mentioned the old Robert Mitchum movie, Cape Fear, and I was watching that movie and I thought this is like a very this character and his like sex drive is profound, you know, in how allegorical it can be.
Art Crumb's movie, he talks about the fact that he couldn't paint it any other way. I mean, here's somebody who has very misogynistic, I mean, way beyond anything we see in painting right now in terms of, you know, I shouldn't say misogyny, that's a judgment, but...
I've seen his work, it's very misogynistic.
Yeah, okay, misogynistic images, and yet he's somebody who professes that this is what he thinks, so why shouldn't he? I mean, all artists can say, I mean, as an author, this is what you think.
I totally agree with him. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of comics, but on the other hand, maybe comics are a place where they don't have all these like, you know, master degree people like telling them to stop doing it, like stop jerking off, you'll go blind. It's like that's sort of the equivalent statement. It's like you're going to go blind if you keep jerking off, you know, and you know, it's they don't have people doing that. They have little 14-year-old jerk-offs buying the magazines, so they keep doing it. And also, I mean, speaking of that, to think that male sexuality isn't like a big part, does not remain adolescent. A big part of, to say that a big part of it doesn't remain adolescence, you don't know men very well, and you don't know your own sex very well.
You talk about essence. What do you mean by essence? And is it, and
Essence,
do you apply to that?
By essence, I mean what is not social.
Do you have essence in your work? Is that
I hope so.
something that informs you?
I think there's things like sex and mortality and, well, those are the two big ones, and those are like essential. I don't think, and I think that painting especially is about things that are essential, not about, it's not as social a form of representation as photography, for instance, or making movies. It's physical. See, I don't want to say essence and sincerity and things like that and then fall into the same, you know, trap as, so many people talk about essence and what they really mean is like gooey paintings, these bad gooey paintings, you know, and that's not what I mean by essence.
Well, I think the fallacy has been in the past, postmodernism, is that fact that essence and beauty and sincerity has been put to the back because it is associated with gooiness and all these things. So that is being reinvented now. Right?
Well, I think, for instance, Francis Picabia, I think, is a great artist and makes incredibly beautiful paintings. And, but they're very ironic. They're all very ironic. And one of my favorite movies is The Third Man, which I think is like the first like big postmodern work of art. It's a very strange. It uses a lot of cliches, a lot of ironic cardboard figures, you know. But it's a intensely beautiful movie. I still, you know, get a tear in my eye in the last scene. You know, I find it an incredibly moving movie. Like, and it's not really sincere. It's just incredibly powerful.